So Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead. This is something that's been a long time coming, but I don't think that it could have come at a more, I guess, bad time or maybe exciting time. And I don't mean exciting like as in, oh, it's great she's dead. I mean exciting as in like, wow, what else could have made this election season even crazier and more high stakes for people? Last night, I witnessed the mental breakdown of many individuals on Twitter. You have, affluent white female liberals, absolutely pledging to fight, on the front lines in the Civil War to defend the Supreme Court seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to stop, the evil fascist Donald Trump from appointing someone to replace her. And, I don't know what else I can say other than that, the death of this woman just brings this country that much closer to the brink of collapse. Now, unfortunately, people seem very eager to come at each other violently, although I don't think that it will be the affluent white female liberals who are the ones doing any of the fighting. But people are calling for riots. They're saying that, we need to burn down Mitch McConnell's house, and it's not just, random, Twitter users doing this. These are blue checks. These are people with a following. These are people who are influential within, the hashtag resistance crowd. And so it does matter what they're saying. Look at how much unrest there has been with the Antifa and BLM stuff, without them even coming out, without them having public figures calling for riots. They've been able to organize these things behind the scenes. And remember, it was not all that long ago that we had the whole conflict over the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. People were very upset about that, trying to do all sorts of things to stop him. There was, somewhat a bit of unrest. There was certainly a hysteria about Brett Kavanaugh, even though he is kind of at best a center-right person. He's not exactly a constitutionalist by any means. The only thing that's really good about Brett Kavanaugh is that he likes guns. Seems to think the Second Amendment's important, but beyond that, he doesn't give a damn about the Constitution. He loves the NSA because, national security and all this other stuff. He has no intent to do anything to harm Roe v. Wade. But nevertheless, his appointment, was a traumatic event for many people on the mainstream left, and the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the appointment of Kavanaugh times 11. The only consolation that these people could hope for is that Trump does not appoint anyone before the election, and Trump ends up losing. Now, also with the death of Ginsburg, I think that this puts the entire November election in jeopardy. Not for any particular candidate, but for both of them. I already thought that the election, no matter who won, is going to be viewed as illegitimate. But now, with Ginsburg gone, you've got you've got a 4-4 split on the Supreme Court, which means that if we have another Bush v. Gore situation where the election is essentially going to be decided in the courts by, each of the campaigns suing each other in different states, trying to get certain ballots counted or thrown out so that their side can end up winning in those various swing states, like what happened in 2000 in Florida. What will end up happening is all these cases will work their way up through the various, federal courts, and eventually to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court is tied, well, then that just means that the decisions go back to, the lower court. Whatever the lower court decided, that ends up being the ruling that stands. And this will create all sorts of chaos because, essentially, the winners of these various states, if they are close, and again, with all the mail-in ballot stuff going on, there's going to be a lot of contesting of votes. You're going to have a lot, very high percentage of votes that are going to be thrown out because they are considered to be filled out improperly. Then you're going to have the Biden campaign or the Trump campaign suing to get those votes counted. Then you're going to have the other campaign counter suing to try and get those votes thrown out. And what essentially then would determine the winner of that state would be that the circuit court that not governs that state, but happens to have jurisdiction over that state. So, for example, I believe in Pennsylvania, the circuit court there is pretty left-leaning, meaning that if we get down to the point where they're challenging things in the court, and that has a chance to swing the election in a place like Pennsylvania, it will end up going for Biden, because if it gets to the Supreme Court, that case, it's going to be tied because there's only 8 justices, and John Roberts is not going to side with the conservatives on something like this. It's too divisive for John Roberts. And so they're going to punt this back to the circuit court in Pennsylvania, and that'll be the ruling that stands. And so that's what happens if Trump doesn't appoint anyone and no one is confirmed to the Supreme Court. And so I would say that's a highly likely a loss situation for him. If he had any chance of winning, and Biden isn't able to win outright and ends up having to win in the courts, if Ginsburg is not replaced and there's no tiebreaker, Trump probably will lose because of that. Now, if he does appoint someone, which he can do, I don't think it can necessarily be done before the election, but if he appoints someone now, Mitch McConnell, this is the day that Mitch McConnell was born for. Mitch McConnell has been waiting to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg probably since she was appointed to the Supreme Court. This is the only issue that Mitch McConnell has any passion for in his life. It's the Supreme Court. He's a very gross swamp creature, in my opinion. He's not a great guy, but the one thing he knows how to do is ram through judicial appointments. And so Mitch McConnell will get whoever Trump picks through the Senate, even if it kills him. And make no mistake, it very well might kill him, unless he's given Secret Service protection, because, the way people are talking about him on Twitter right now, the mob is going to be coming for him. They're going to burn his house down. So what Trump essentially needs to do, if he wants to have any chance of winning this upcoming election, is he needs to appoint someone to the court. Mitch McConnell needs to confirm them, not necessarily by election day, but by the time that any case makes it before the Supreme Court. Now, apparently Chuck Grassley, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, and I guess even Lindsey Graham to some extent, have said that they won't support a new justice being appointed this year. They haven't said that since Ginsburg died, but they said that before Ginsburg died. But again, these people are politicians. I'm sure Mitch McConnell can do something to strong-arm these people into doing it. I mean, Susan Collins voted for Brett Kavanaugh. Don't forget that. But, Susan Collins might end up losing re-election anyway, so maybe she doesn't care what Mitch McConnell threatens her with. If she's a lame duck, especially if this doesn't come to a vote before the election and Susan Collins ends up losing her re-election, she probably will vote against whoever they try and ram through. So Susan Collins is probably a pretty likely no. Lindsey Graham, I think, and Chuck Grassley would be very persuadable. Murkowski, however, is a liberal. She just happens to be from a Republican family. That's the only reason why she is a Republican. She was a daddy's girl. Her dad literally gave her Senate seat. Now, onto the risks of appointing a Supreme Court justice. A lot of people are saying that Trump should just completely hold off and say, okay, we're going to wait until after the election to do anything on this and make it a big election issue to try and I guess, force the segment of conservatives, mostly I would think the religious right, into getting out to vote for him, because there's a lot of Republicans who, for a very, very long time, have dreamed of the day that Ginsburg is no longer on the Supreme Court and that they can put in some, a pro-life justice who doesn't have the absurd opinion that somehow the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution was meant to make it so that people can have abortions. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I've tried to read the Roe v. Wade decision, and it really, even to me, it comes across as total nonsense. From a legal standpoint, of course, from their analysis of the law, which most Supreme Court decisions really do. I mean, going all the way back to the first Supreme Court, they have been rewriting the Constitution ever since and twisting it to mean whatever they want. But anyway, so goes the strategy that these people are proposing. If Trump doesn't appoint a replacement for Ginsburg yet, he can blackmail all of those who want her to be replaced into voting for him, which I think is a dumb strategy. I think that those people would be, probably more energized if Trump actually just went and did it. What is a bigger risk is that by appointing a replacement for Ginsburg, it will anger Democrats and energize them to go out and vote more. Now, to the extent that there is a chunk of Democrat voters who weren't planning to vote already and then would go vote because Ginsburg was replaced. I don't know how many of those there are. I think the people who are very upset about the possibility of Ginsburg being replaced are going to vote either way because they want to make sure that if Trump doesn't appoint someone before the election, that a Democrat can appoint Ginsburg's replacement after the election. So whether Trump appoints this person or not, I think that the people who care about this as a big issue for them are going to vote either way. Now, the other risk is that Ed Markey of Massachusetts, and he's not the first to suggest this, but he's the first to suggest it after Ginsburg died, said that, hey, if Trump replaces Ginsburg, we're just going to pack the court next time there's a Democrat president, which Democrats have been talking about packing the court now for quite some time. I don't think that that's something that will be just a result of Trump replacing Ginsburg. Court packing is one of the last basic decencies that are left in Washington. It's one of the last unspoken rules that people have yet to break. And the idea is that there's nothing in the Constitution that limits how many Supreme Court justices there could be, but there's this idea that we want to maintain some balance in our country because the Supreme Court has so much power that if you just pack the court with a bunch of people from your party, that is going to make life completely unlivable for the other side of the political spectrum. FDR tried to do this first in the 1930s because the Supreme Court kept striking down the New Deal because it was incredibly unconstitutional. FDR said the Constitution is dumb. I need justices who will just let me do what I want, so I'm going to put in 15 new Supreme Court justices so that the old ones don't matter. People from both parties at the time were aghast that FDR would do such a thing, and ever since then, court packing has been a serious taboo. But, the way things have been going the last couple of years, I'm not surprised that it is being normalized, and it probably will happen during the next Democrat administration. And of course, once that happens, the Supreme Court will lose its legitimacy because it will be seen purely as a partisan body, which it should anyway. The Supreme Court is just 9 lawyers with fancy robes that nobody elected. And I and many other Americans resent the power that they have over us. But as much as the Democrats packing the court will delegitimize the Supreme Court in the eyes of the right, Trump replacing Ginsburg will delegitimize the Supreme Court in the eyes of the left anyway. So it seems to me that either way, moving forward, the Supreme Court will be delegitimized and be not respected by the American people, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I would like to get to the point to where the Supreme Court is completely defanged and people just start disregarding their rulings. I'd much rather settle these things through elections than by having these 9 unelected people, wielding so much power. Even if that goes against me sometimes, I'll just make sure I live in an area with people who think like me, to where I don't have to rely on the Supreme Court. And even when the Supreme Court does the right thing, like ruling that, Chicago cannot outlaw handguns because that's an obvious violation of the Second Amendment, they still don't go so far as to apply things to their greatest extent. They sort of do it marginally. They say, well, you have to let people have handguns, but you can still make it almost impossible. In fact, there was a shooting of a black man in Chicago a few months ago. It didn't get a ton of press coverage, but the police were trying to arrest him because he didn't have all of his proper forms of ID necessary to carry a gun. So, like, he had his gun. I think he had his driver's license on him, but you also have to have a some kind of a gun ownership license as well as a concealed carry license or something, and he was missing one of the forms of ID necessary, and he took off because he's like, oh damn, I'm gonna get arrested, and then because of course as a gun owner, if you get arrested, you're done, you lose your guns forever, so it's not a good thing. So he ran and they killed him. The Supreme Court didn't say that that's unconstitutional. They just said, well, you have to give people some opportunity to own a gun. Even if it is ridiculously impossible to the point where people are getting killed in the streets because they didn't file the correct paperwork and whatnot because of clerical errors. So as far as I'm concerned, the Supreme Court has done a garbage job defending the Second Amendment. I'd much rather worry about trying to defend it in elections, if we have very localized elections, if we can get rid of federal elections. So that's about how I see it at this point. The Supreme Court as an institution, I think, is on its last leg, just like so many of America's institutions. And the fight over Ginsburg's replacement will become the biggest issue of 2020. That is until the inevitably effed up election that happens on November 3rd. So with that said, if you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.